Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh and welcome to some more Gran Turismo Sport, a racing game developed by Polyphony Digital and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment for the PlayStation 4. Focusing on the game's online mode, known as Sport Mode, in this episode I take a look at my performance in the 9th race of the second stage of the 2019 Manufacturer Series season, which was a Group 4 race held at the Autodrome Lago Maggiore East Circuit. With that, let's get racing. Taking a look at the grid then, you'll see that I qualified on pole with a 125.1. My story for qualifying, I was very pleased with my qualifying session and that I beat my target time by 0.2 of a second, which was a personal best for me, and to be sharing the front row with perhaps the strongest car at this circuit, the Toyota 86, gave me the confidence to think that I'd be on course for at least a second place finish, if not first place, if I could hold the Toyota off. But in holding the Toyota off, that would be a case of preventing the inevitable, as we'll go on to explain now. Because this race was a sprint, 9 laps, no fuel saving required, but tyre wear would be a key factor in the second half of the race, particularly from lap 6 onwards for myself, in that going through the higher speed cornering section, so turn 6 through to 10, particularly turn 8 I'd be attacking that flat out for laps 1 to 5, that'd be my target, whereas on lap 6 the tyre wear factor would come in, I'd need to start lifting through turn 8, otherwise I'd be running off the circuit. And at that point, a good number of cars with the better tyre wear factor and the better innate grip, the Toyota 86 being the personification of those two factors, would be able to still attack that corner flat out, hold a lot more speed through those corners, going up into the final hairpin at turn 11. And so that's where they'd really start to gain the pace advantage, whereas I'd start to fall off of the ideal pace, and it'd be a case of, could I hold on to the very end? Well, we'll find out as we come down to the final quarter of this 19 car grid, where 50% of us are A driver rating, 50% are B driver rating. This was because my sportsmanship rating dropped at the previous race at Dragon Trail Gardens from 99 to 85, and so the lobby that was available to be matched up with was more restricted in terms of the number of A-class drivers, and so some B-class drivers also got tossed in there. Not complaining, it is what it is, and we just had to see whether we could be the best of the group or finish second if we couldn't hold on to first, as mentioned previously. But we're out to get underway with a rolling start as always. It'll be the final race in the Group 4 car. I'm really going to miss this car because I love the Group 4 NSX. It's such a comfortable car to drive. It feels so smooth with regards to handling and straight line speed. But still, we'll reminisce another time. It'll be go 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 very shortly, and my target for the first lap is just to simply drive a clean lap, get the tyres up to temperature and try to pull away. I get this Toyota out of the slipstream zone in my car, that 1 to 1.2 second window. So we're underway and coming down to the first corner here. We're not going to do anything too aggressive here. We're just going to nail it about 60 metres from the corner on the braking point, and then tuck it in the second gear here. We can see that behind things are getting a little bit frisky for third place right now between the Aston Martin and the GTR. That Toyota is filling up our wind mirror at the moment. And what we don't want them to do is get a shot at us going through some of these corners in the early stages, because if we haven't got the tyres up to temperature and we push too hard on the throttle, we could see the rear end completely kick out and spin us round. But it seems as though we're doing a good enough job so far as we come out of turn 4, now going down the straight towards turn 5. We've got a gap of approximately 0.7 seconds, and charging down to turn 5, this was the most difficult corner of the circuit because it's got a delayed apex where we'll be stamping on the brakes, going down to third gear and then shifting down to second gear, using that to pull the nose of the car around before shifting up into third and hitting the accelerator to go charging up the hill towards turn 6 and into this medium to high speed cornering section, the most technical part of the circuit. Where if you nailed it right through here, you'd maintain a lot of speed and gain a lot of time. If you got it wrong, however, well, the problems would just stack up and you can make a lot of mistakes, pick up a good number of penalties, and that would cost you a huge amount of time over the race distance. As we get cleanly through this entire section, finishing with turn 10 there, the small right-hander, and now up to the hairpin at 11. And looking at our rearview mirror, you can see how much time the 86 has gained on us already, because they're stronger through that technical section, and we get a half decent run into the hairpin, but unfortunately we put two wheels, our right hand wheels, up on the curb, the raised curb, and that causes the car to kick round and we have to lift off, which causes the 86 to come into the back of us, which is completely understandable. But for now we're holding on to the position, as the GTR in third seems to get a slight run towards the 86, but not enough to contest into turn 1, and we're just going to focus again on racing our own race right now. And if we end up driving a bit too slowly for the 86's liking, well, perhaps the GTR behind, with straight line speed advantage over the 86, can make a move and force the 86 to focus on defence rather than offence. But unfortunately the GTR's got the Aston Martin behind it in 4th place, so they may be focusing more on defence rather than offence right now, and I was really hoping that 86 would have to go defensive against the GTR, because right now I am struggling a little bit to break that toe. We can see the gap is only half a second right now, as we set a purple sector there, but I get the feeling the 86 may be working on an even faster lap. Taking the same line as on the first lap through turn 5, getting it nice and clean through there and using the full width of the track before charging up the hill towards turn 6. What we can see is that our group of 4 cars are essentially broken away from the rest of the grid, so really at the moment it is a battle for first place by 4 cars. But we can see that the Aston Martin and the GTR are falling off very gradually at this point in time. The GTR is just about hanging in there, but the 86 really is the key factor for me, in the fact it's going to be a battle between the two of us for first place. I'm not going to get any out of jail cards here with the 86 potentially being distracted by the GTR, as they go very late on the brakes to try and go for a move on the outside into the hairpin, but I'm having none of it. Close the door on them as we come out. Unfortunately, I do put my left hand wheels on the grass there, which compromises my exit speed, but for now I'm able to pull away because I've got the strength in the lower gear range of acceleration as we go onto the straight from 2nd gear up into 4th gear, and the 86 starts to fall back a little bit, and that was one thing I could rely upon to keep me ahead of the 86 when coming out to that final hairpin and out of a good number of corners, that I would have the acceleration advantage and I could try to apply that where possible. If the 86 was going to have to overtake me, they'd have to do it by getting alongside me going into a corner. They'd have to carry a huge amount of speed compared to myself. Now, of course, as I said previously, it's not really going to be something they can do in these opening laps, but by the time we get to lap 6, you're going to see a noticeable difference in the pace of our cars relative to one another, as the fastest lap on the 2nd lap was set by the guy down in 5th, a fellow Brit. Now, coming into turn 5 for the 3rd time of asking, we see we get nice and clean there, but look how much space the 86 behind is taking out of me. They are definitely a lot faster in general and more confident in terms of the lines they're able to take around the circuit, whereas I've got to take more conservative lines to avoid putting the car off the circuit. Carrying too much speed can be a very dangerous thing. Getting nice and clean through turn 6 and 7, going into the high speed corner at turn 8 here, not lifting at this point as mentioned previously, then over 9 and then into 10 here, now coming up to the hairpin once again. This absolutely wonderful hairpin, I must admit I really love this circuit, a very challenging circuit for all the right reasons. Now coming into the hairpin, we missed the apex a little bit but not too much. We get the car stopped and icy on the apex, the 86 just follows suit this time, doesn't go for a move around the outside, and it's a case of also a learning game between us right now. We're sizing one another up. The 86 of course is sizing me up in terms of where I'm strong and where I'm weak on the race pace, and I'm sizing up the 86 driver in terms of the way they're approaching the corners. What we can see is they close very quickly in the braking zones of the corners. They may not be applying 100% brake, whereas I am. Perhaps they're applying 75% brake, or perhaps they're using a later braking point. So what I'm thinking at this point is, well, the 86 may go for a lunge because they seem a lot more confident on their braking prowess compared to myself, and so I have to be wary of that, and they may try to chuck one up the inside as we go deeper and deeper into the race. And I've been on the experienced end of actually doing that to someone, as we saw in race 7 of stage 2, where we're facing down against the Frenchman in the Porsche, but that's a story in the past. Now coming through turn 5 here, and coming out of it once again nice and cleanly using the full width of the track. Just keep an eye as well where I'm starting to pull away from the 86, and we can see it's definitely in these zones where I've got a bit of straight. I'm just able to eke out enough of a gap to stay safe, but coming into turn 6 in particular, Jesus, they get very close to the back of my car and they're really pushing the track limits like myself to the maximum degree here as we now come through turns 9 and 10, and we can see that 86 is getting closer and closer each lap, and they've pulled a good gap away from the GTR now, so it's just us two fighting for the lead at this point. We're now at braking point once again, going into the final hairpin here. I go a little bit deep coming out of the apex, but we can see the acceleration advantage I have gives me the saving grace here, and that's why I wasn't too worried about going too deep into the hairpin, because I could get good acceleration out of it. And it's a case, even with the slipstream, you can see I'm still just pulling tiny bits of time over the 86 as we go into the next lap, and we switch to the replay camera to give you the third person perspective of the fight that's going on. And we can see here just how confident the 86 driver is in their machine, and how late on the brakes they're going, and how close they're getting to the back of my car. As they take a look up the inside as we go into turn 3, I'm not able to make it count, but they're perhaps just trying to distract me. I'm having none of it. I'm focusing very heavily on my race right now. I just want to get all my lines synced up. You can see how tight a line they take through turn 4 compared to myself, and that's what's giving them the speed to stay right on my backside as we now go up into turn 5. And I'm expecting here perhaps they'll have a look up the inside, but they don't. Instead, they just seem to wait by looks of things. Tap in the back of my car, perhaps, although we can't really tell on the replay camera. It's not as clear as if we're on the onboard and the rear view mirror. We'll be able to see if our sportsmanship rating went down because they went to the back of the vehicle. As we come up into turn 6 here, going through the wonderful section of 6 through to 10, we can see the 86 is really pushing, but here they actually put all wheels off of the circuit, i.e. all 4 wheels came off that curb going through turn 7, and as a result they've picked up a half-second penalty, which they're going to have to serve on the next lap. But now they're going to go for a move up the inside into the final hairpin here. I'm not going to defend it because what I thought to myself at the time is that 86 is a very enthusiastic driver on the brakes, and they're going to overbrake themselves. Indeed they do, and so I go for the cutback coming out of the hairpin, and it means I'm able to get the acceleration out of the corner to retain the lead for another lap. And that's what I was sizing up the enthusiasm that the 86 driver was showing, and with the overspeed of the slipstream going up into turn 11, I thought to myself, I'm going to be safe to just go for the cutback there. They're not going to be able to park the car in the apex to make the move stick. So for now they're going to have to fall back a little bit, and remember they are going to have to serve a half-second penalty, which will pull them further back towards the GTR, who's closed up a little bit through the fighting that we've had in the final hairpin there on the previous lap. So what I thought at this point was, well, the race isn't over as such, but it just gives me a little bit of breathing room, and it means I can nurse the tyres a little bit more. Because one thing that has to be considered, when I do my race simulation runs, I'm doing them entirely by myself. I'm not simulating for fighting. And so the tyres at this point in the race, albeit if you look in the bottom left hand corner of your screen, they don't look as though they've got much wear on them. I can assure you there's more wear there than perhaps the graphic would suggest. And there's a bit more wear there than I'd expect if I was racing by myself and did not have to keep fending off the 86. And that's a concern for me because now I'm starting to move into a little bit more uncharted territory. What's lap 9 going to be like with some additional wear on top of what I'm used to? And we can see that whilst the 86 has served their penalty and the gap between myself and them has expanded to just shy of a second, that gap is going to start closing up as we go deeper and deeper into the race, simply because now they're going to really be able to use that pace advantage that we mentioned previously. Now come up into the final corner here, just getting the hairpin synced up very nicely. Not going to jump the wheels, either right hand wheels, up on the raised curve there because we don't want to lose any time or speed. And we can see that when we get the exit out of the corner, that's where we really open that gap up, now up to 1.2 seconds. And unfortunately for us, what I was hoping perhaps with the GTR in third would be able to cause the 86 some problems. It looks as though they're going for a move down the inside, going into turn 1, but they're not able to get close enough to make the move, unfortunately. And what that means is the 86 can just rinse and repeat what they did earlier in the race versus the GTR, just simply outrun them and disappear off up the road. The GTR will be faster straight line, so it's probably not going to happen immediately, but over the next couple of laps I expect that GTR will settle for third, and then the 86 will come back onto my heels for second. And what we can see as we come out of turn 4 for the 7th time of asking here, that gap is starting to close down. It's now 1.1 seconds throughout that one corner, 0.1 of a second as we come into turn 5. Watch how the gap starts to condense over the rest of the lap, and this was the fear factor that I had, because now I'm having to take an earlier braking point in order to get nice and tight on the apex of turn 5 because of that tyre wear factor. And we can see the gap, whilst it's holding up 1.1 right now, as we go into turn 6 here, this was where the GT86 was very strong compared to my own car, and the gap drops a little bit, and we're coming through the rest of these corners here, and you'll note that I start to lift going through the corner, and this is precisely the point when that gap can come down, because the 86 can attack it flat out. It's now down to 0.9 seconds, so that's another tenth already taken out of me in that sector of the circuit. Now coming up to the final hairpin here, somewhere they seem to be braking later as well and getting the car stopped very nicely on the apex and carrying a lot of speed through. We can see that the gap has dropped down to 0.6 seconds. It will open up now because of the acceleration zone out to 0.8 seconds, but it's going to just be holding off of the 0.9 second region. It does go up to there, but it will be condensing down again once we get into turn 1. So already they've taken 2/10 them out to me on lap number 7. And now as we add some more tyre wear in and go into the next lap, and the 86 definitely does not have to worry about defending against the GTR anymore. They don't have to worry about that in their rear view mirrors. Look at how the gap is now condensing even further. 2/10 just out of the first 2 corners. Now going through turn 3 and coming up into turn 4, where the 86 can get their car all the way over to the left hand side of the circuit more easily than I can. They're able to close the gap even more by another 10. It is going to be close at the very end. It's probably not going to happen on this lap unless I make an unexpected error, but on the final lap they're going to be full of, I'm going to have a rear view mirror full of the 86 once more. So going into turn 5 here, we can see they've already condensed the gap even more, but they went a little bit deep there, getting a bit enthusiastic on the brakes, and as a result the gap opens up to 0.6 seconds. But now we're coming into the medium to high speed cornering section, the wonderful section where they're going to be stronger. We missed the apex of turn 6 a little bit. It doesn't compromise our line too much through 7, but then the rear end gets a little bit jagged coming off the curve out 7 into 8, and through the combination of that and lifting, look how the gap is now 0.3 seconds. They're even closer than I anticipated already. And what I'm speaking to myself at this point is, right, don't worry about defending going into the hairpin this time. They're too far back unless they literally want to toss the car at me. They're going to look down the outside and potentially go for the cutback, expecting me to perhaps go too deep on the brakes, but manage that nicely, just one more lap to go. And what I was thinking here was, right, if that 86 is really close coming out of sector 1, so by the end of turn 4, what I'm actually going to do is see if I can let them by going through turns 5 or 6. Now the reason for this is, you've got to be wary of the fact that I already used the cutback in the final hairpin to deal with the 86's attack on me back on lap number 4, I think it was, where they got past and I got back past them going onto the start-finish straight. But they're going to be wary to that, and I expect they'll try to stop their car as hard as possible on the apex of turn 11. So instead what I'm going to do, just taking the natural racing lines that I can manage through the corner, you can see how strong they are in terms of pace compared to me, is just trying to manage my lines and see if I can get the 86 into a position where they can get past. Unfortunately they had to drop off at the back of me going out of turn 4, so it's not going to be into turn 5 where I expected them to potentially make the move, but going up into turn 6 I reckon it's going to happen. And what you'll see is at first is the 86 perhaps doesn't signal they're going to go for the move here, but I know they're going to go for it as they pull to the outside. So as I go to turn in here on the brakes, I actually decide not to turn in immediately to let them through, and I want to tuck in as soon as possible behind them and use the speed they're going to give me through the slipstream factor going through this high speed set of corners now in order to pull me as close as possible to them going into the final hairpin, because I want to be right on their backside coming out of that hairpin and use my acceleration down the straight to overcome the advantage they've gained. Now coming into the final hairpin, are they going to go deep on the brakes, perhaps make a mistake as I look to the inside here to distract them a little bit? Not quite, and compromise my own line. It doesn't cost me too much time as we get out the corner. They've nailed that corner perfectly at the ninth time of asking, and as a result it means that we're not going to be able to beat them to the finish line. Instead we'll bring the NSX home in a successful second place. Having had time to reflect, I was very pleased with the final result considering the pace advantage that the Toyota 86 had over the race distance. It's unfortunate I wasn't able to hold them off for one more lap, but at the same time it's good points on the board, and on top of that, through this race being a relatively clean one, I was able to get my sportsmanship rating back up to 94, which would mean for the final race of the season I would be in an all-A driver rating lobby, which would be achieved by having a sportsmanship rating somewhere between 92 and 99. Now the final race of the season would be at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya GP layout circuit on Saturday the 7th of September 2019, and going into that, based on the result of this race, i.e. race 9 as the second stage, I was 10th for Honda at this point. Would I be able to hold on to 10th, as if I could finish 10th or higher for Honda, I'd finish as a star player for Honda and have an S against my name rather than my standard driver rating, which would be an A? Well, to find out, you'll need to tune into the next video. Until then, thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like, comment or subscribe for future episodes. As always, I have been TX141, and until next time, take care and drive safely.